What is going on, everybody? This is Michelle Hayward. I'm so happy you are joining me. Could be live, could be on the replay, but whichever it is great to see you. Today, I wanted to talk about a subject that is too often ignored, but definitely has significant impact when it comes to um, Black and Brown people, when it comes to uh, the things we encounter, especially in the workplace. And so, what I wanted to talk about was racial trauma, what it is, why it matters, and how to, oftentimes we experience things and we don't know that it's something that we shouldn't be experiencing or that we may need help with. And so, racial trauma it's one of those things because everybody, if you're a marginalized person, underrepresented um, person of color, you everybody around you is dealing with it. And so you may not think it's anything to be concerned about. Well, I won't say concerned about, but that you're experiencing something that you that is different. So racial trauma is it's really the result of racism, racial bias, and just racist abuse that we continue to see over and over again, whether it's in movies and television, all sorts of media. And that truly does affect us on a personal level. When we look at racism, we're talking about education, access to food, access to medical care, and these and so much more, right? So when we look at it, all of those cause us racial trauma because we are impacted simply because of our race. And we know certain times that it can be we know it's tied to our race, but we don't always know how it's tied to how it makes us feel. So when you encounter racial trauma, you may feel you'll have symptoms very similar to PTSD. And you may not even realize it because everybody around you is dealing with some of the same things: high blood pressure, depression, right? Maybe you overeat, so weight gain. So everybody's having very similar um, symptoms from racial trauma, but it's not tied back to racial trauma. And so it's really important to evaluate what that looks like. What's really interesting when we talk about racial trauma, um, we often think about encounters with police. We often talk about the microaggressions we experience in the workplace, but it is literally in every layer of what we encounter here in the US that has built into systemic racism structure. And so you may encounter it on different levels the more that you are in places where you are marginalized where you're a marginalized person. So it's really important to take into account the things people say or do towards you and how do they get internalized. Um, Oftentimes, I don't know if you remember being bullied or seeing someone being bullied, and are you having the same anxiety Sunday night, knowing you have to go into a workplace where you encounter racism and racist bias over and over again. And that is truly part of racial trauma. What too often we think is the better we do, right? We're in middle class or upper middle class, we don't experience as much racial trauma. Well, there are actually studies that say differently. The studies that say, hey, yeah, exactly. Sydney, great. This is great to talk about it. And I think we're seeing millennials do much better than us Gen Xers getting help with it. Um, and what we found, some studies have shown wherein racial trauma is actually greater, or people with college degrees experience more than those with high school diplomas. So you would think, being more educated, you would experience it less. And that's not what's happening. We're actually experiencing it more at education levels. And it is interesting when we talk often about recruiting, and it's like it's refer a friend. A lot of, like, we get our best hires from referrals. And employers who have Black and brown employees who don't refer friends, oftentimes we're like, if when somebody approaches us, at least in my circle, and they're looking for a job, like, do you have any jobs? They're like, well, how bad do you need a job? And we go through and we literally discuss the culture, or how horrible the culture is of an organization, which is, this is the racial trauma. These are the racist biases and the racist behavior you can encounter, and I've encountered or seen others encounter within this organization. Are you able to come in, and are you willing to go through more racial trauma? So the lack of referrals too often in an organization when it comes to Black and brown employees is that your organization is racist. We won't share that information with other people. We won't recommend they come work here because of that. And they're like, well, they don't have, it's not that many Black women engineers. Like, nah, I just won't tell anybody come work here. I'm like, how desperate are you for a job? Do you really need it that badly? Um, you might want to go talk to X, Y, and Z and see if where they're working is better. And it's really to that level. And employers are thinking it's just not that many. Like, hell no, I like my friends, I like my family, I want to keep them. I don't want them to deal with what I'm going through. So I refuse to let them come in here and go through the same abuse. And it's really important. Sydney was in here. I don't know if she still is, saying that it's something to be discussed, and it needs to be discussed on so many different levels, but it needs to be discussed even more when we're talking about um, how do we overcome that? How do we deal with it? What happens to us when we don't deal with it? So some of us, we have parents who have high blood pressure and other medical issues, and they've lived through the civil rights movement, and they've marched, and a lot of the things they're encountering are racial trauma. It is not because of bad diets necessarily. It is just racism and the access to food and healthcare. So it is really important that we take a look at that and truly understand what is going on, and how it truly impacts us when it comes to racial trauma. So on Saturday, this coming Saturday, October 24th, Crystal Atha is one of our trainers for the Underestimated Women in STEM Mid-Level Management Conference. She is going to be talking about racial trauma and really how to deal with it. Racial trauma, let me be very specific. Racial trauma in corporate and healing from it. So, how do we heal from racial trauma in corporate America? And she's going to spend time going through this and really sharing, this is what you've encountered, this is what you're seeing, but how do we heal from it? And so it's going to be 3.5 hour training discussing it, really going in and understanding its impact, healing from it, and starting the process of healing. Because of course that's not long enough, but it's definitely a worthwhile discussion, and it's a starting point for all of us when it comes to healing. Yes, it's different regionally as well. Microaggression. I didn't experience this until I moved. Yes, yes. Let me just know. Yeah, it is needed, and we need to have consistently have more and more discussions. I love being over on Twitter, and they're talking about openly sharing tweets about visiting their therapist. They being millennials, and that's something like us Gen Xers, we still like that's personal. We don't discuss that stuff outside of the household. But what I really love about the millennials is their openness to share their traumas and how they're getting help, and we're asking where they can get help, whether it is Black and brown practitioners, it is podcasts, It is YouTube channels. Like, where can they really, really get this? Until I moved from the South to North. Blessings. No. Yeah, you know what? You know what I found too, Reby? Sometimes the microaggressions, and it's an article. I'll see if I can find it and I'll share it here. That actually I found it on LinkedIn. On sometimes we internalize the racism we encounter because it's the norm, right? And so we thought we didn't encounter it, but it's just normal. And what I'll say is my local grocery store, I won't say the brand, in my hometown, all of the fruits and vegetables are like 30 to 40% more expensive than if you drove 20 minutes away. Yet anything that is, let me take that back. The vegetables and stuff are lower, cheaper, but anything that's processed that targets the black community, local community, is 20 to 40% higher. And my mom had a neighbor that moved in a few years ago, and the lady went grocery shopping in the grocery store and asked, "Why is everything more, certain items so much more expensive?" She's like, "Because black people buy it." So because it's black people, they want us to spend more money, and you're spending less on the fruits and vegetables because they figure we don't buy it. And so those are the things we see over and over again. And those are the things that we encounter over and over again when we go places. So just keep an eye out. Sometimes we internalize, like, well, they own the grocery store, they can do whatever they want to do. No, they are taking advantage of their customer base who chooses to shop with them, and then we really don't. So I really think it's important that we look at that. But we're definitely going to be talking about healing from racial trauma on Saturday. If you want to continue the discussion about it, definitely go check out bit.ly mid-level to exec. Check that out. We would love to have you join us. Buy a ticket. It doesn't cost too much at this point. I don't know what it costs. Maybe $57 for a 3.5 hour training. We've coupled that with building legacy as well, because we're in corporate. A lot of times we're the only, and many times we're the first. And what does building legacy look like, and how can we heal from racial trauma in corporate America while we're in corporate America and we don't plan to leave corporate America? So having these discussions, really building out plans and being actionable is what this training is about. So I would love to have you on Saturday afternoon. This is going to start around noon Eastern time. So definitely check it out. Let's keep these discussions going. Let's definitely take action in this. All right. Thanks. Thanks, Laura. Hey, Shelly. So I'm going to get off of here, everybody. Have a great day, and I will see you later. Bye.